Thank you very much, Kevin. Singing sounds fantastic. I just want to extend a warm welcome to those of you who are visiting and guests with us today. We are grateful that you're here. I'm honored to have my mom and my sister here from Ontario, so I will be on good behavior today. Just grateful that they made it safely and grateful to have them here for a week. We had a great time on Wednesday, and thank you so much for everyone's participation. For those of you who brought food and donated items for us, apples, bread, peanut butter, jam, granola bars, all those sort of things. We even got socks, and socks went into the lunch bags. We were able to deliver 400 lunches, and thank you for everyone who participated in that. Even if you couldn't be here, but you helped donate, you had a big part to play in this. Thank you so much. And for those of us who went downtown, I know it's a different sight, and I just appreciate everybody that could participate in this. But this is a picture I want to show you of something that I think is really important for us to see. We are a family that is here to help people find and follow Jesus, and I want to show you what a family looks like. I thought this picture was really cool. We have Kay, who's a widow, was here, 85 years old, and we have Chittigan that was with us. He's 8.5 months old, but they just really helped, and Chittigan's, what a joy Chittigan is. And anyways, we just thank everybody. This is what family looks like, and thank you for all the young people that came out as well and be able to go downtown. Last week, we finished off our lesson in Hebrews chapter 11, talking about those who have gone before us, those that are surrounding us, and there's a hall of faith that's mentioned, and all these people that are mentioned that have gone before us that we can read about in the scriptures. But we also have those that have gone before us that really had an impact in our lives, those that led us to Jesus, those that helped us hang in there in the race. And I want to start this lesson off this morning with that same verse we kind of ended with last week. And it looks like this. We're going to do some mountain climbing today. So if you're with me, be ready. We're climbing some mountains. Therefore, since we are surrounded by such a huge crowd of witnesses of the life of faith, let us strip off every weight that slows us down, especially the sin that so easily trips us up. And let us run with endurance the race God has set before us. So there's this picture, and again, we talked about the Olympics and how this past year in Tokyo, there was no one in the stands, no one there to cheer anybody on, and how quiet it must have been as a world record is set and you cross the finish line. I want to be thinking about that as we kind of move towards this message today. But there is endurance that's needed. There is endurance that's needed. I want to read this story. This is actually from a pole vaulter. His name is Bob Richards. He won some medals way back. He was a pole vaulter champion for the U.S. team. But he shares a moving story. It has nothing to do with pole vaulting, and I hope you'll enjoy it. But it really brings out a message that I want you to really understand here. It's about a skinny young boy who loved football with all his heart. Practice after practice, he went out, and he eagerly gave everything he had. But being half the size of the other boys, he got absolutely nowhere. At all the games, this hopeful athlete sat on the bench and hardly ever played. This teenager lived alone with his father, and the two of them had a very special relationship. Even though the son was always on the bench, his father was always in the stands cheering for him. He never missed a game. This young man was still the smallest in his class when he entered high school, but his father continued to encourage him, but also made it very clear that if he didn't want to continue in football, that was okay. But he never missed a game. But the young man loved football so much that he decided to hang in there, and he was determined to try his best at every practice. And perhaps he'd get to play when he became a senior. Well, all through high school, he never missed a practice nor a game, but he remained on a bench warmer for 4 years. But his faithful father was always in the stands, always with words of encouragement for him. And when the young man went to college, he decided to try out for football team as a walk-on. And everyone was sure he could never make the cut, but he did. And the coach admitted that he kept him on the roster because he always put his heart and his soul to every practice. And at the same time, he provided the other teammates with a spirit of hustle that they badly needed. So the news that had survived, or the news that he had survived the cut, he was thrilled. He had to call his dad, and he let his dad know. And his dad was so happy for him, and he sent season tickets to his dad to all of the college games. Well, this persistent young athlete never missed a practice during those 4 years either in college, but he never played in one single game. And it was at the end of his senior football season, as he ran out to the practice field, the coach met him with a message. He received a telegram, and he handed it to his son. Well, his son read the telegram, and he became deathly silent. Swallowing hard, he mumbled to the coach. He said, "My dad died this morning. Is it all right if I miss practice?" Well, the coach put his arm gently around his shoulder and said, "It's okay. You go be with your family, and don't try to rush back for Saturday's game." Saturday arrived, and the game was not going well. In the third quarter, when the team was 10 points behind, a silent young man slipped into the empty locker room, and he put on his football gear. As he ran onto the sidelines, the coach and his players were astounded as to why is this faithful teammate back here? But this time, with determination, he said, "Coach, you gotta let me in. Please, let me in. I've just got to play." The coach pretended not to hear him. There was no way he wanted the worst player in this close playoff game, but the young man persisted. And finally, feeling sorry for the kid, the coach gave in. "All right," he said, "you can go in." And before long, the coach and the players and everyone in the stands could not believe their eyes. This little unknown who had never played before in a big game, but gave everything he could in practice, was now out there, and they couldn't stop him. He was blocking, tackling like a professional. His team began to win. They were coming back. The score was soon tied. And in the closing seconds of this game, the kid intercepted a pass and ran all the way for a touchdown. The fans broke loose. The cheering was so loud. And his teammates hoisted him on their shoulders. And such cheering that you've never heard before. But finally, after the stands had emptied and the team was showered and left the locker room, the coach noticed this young man was sitting quietly in the corner all alone. The coach came to him and said, "Kid, I can't believe it. You were fantastic. What got into you? How did you do it?" He looked at the coach with tears in his eyes and said, "Well, you knew my dad died." He said, "But did you know that my dad was blind?" The young man swallowed hard and forced a smile. "Dad came to all of my games, but today was the first time he could see me play. And I wanted to show him I could do it." We are all surrounded by a great cloud of witnesses. We have those that have gone before us, and they are cheering us on. They watch us as we're continue to run, and they're saying, "Hang in there. Don't give up. Keep running." But they also see us in those times when we actually hinder ourselves in this race, and we kind of slow ourselves down in our own lives. You know, the athletes, they will wear these weighted vests if you're in running races. They'll weigh themselves down. They'll put ankle weights on, whatever it is, to weigh themselves down so they can build this endurance. And they run and run. But when race time comes, they strip those weights off. And it's built this endurance that they can run even faster. But we all have weights that we carry around. And you know, some of those weights aren't bad things. Some of those weights are actually good things. But those good things, what they end up doing sometimes is get in the way of our relationship with God. Could be our entertainment. Is entertainment bad? No. It could be our social platforms that we use. It could be eating habits. It could be whatever. Things that aren't bad things. But when they're done in excess, what happens is they become idols in our life. But some of the weights that we do carry, they are sins. These slow us down, they trip us up, and eventually they take us out of the race altogether. And just imagine those that have gone before you and they're watching this happen saying, don't do it. Don't do it. Strip that weight off. Get rid of that sin, your addictions, your distractions, your resentments in your relationships. What Daryl talked about this morning, that bitterness that we have, get rid of it. It destroys you in the race. And the thought life that we think is all private and no one else sees eventually comes out in our relationships. And it can take us out of the race. Now, I want to talk about a word typically we don't like, but it's discipline. Without discipline, you're never going to be at your best. So the writer of Hebrews is now about to talk about discipline to us. And he's assuming, this was written in 60 AD. This was back when discipline was something that was just expected. And you would have been raised up in families where discipline was very much part of your family. And so he's assuming, as this is written, when we read it, there's some wording in here that maybe just doesn't fit with our culture today so much. Maybe you don't see discipline so much. Maybe you weren't disciplined as a child. But listen to what it says in verse 7 of chapter 12. As you endure this divine discipline, so the discipline from God, remember that God is treating you as his own children. Who ever heard of a child who's never disciplined by his father? So at the time this writer is writing this, discipline would have been common. But today, many people are not disciplined. You know, we have a culture today, let the kids raise themselves. Don't get in their way. Let them do what they want when they want. But we all know the end of that. That's why discipline is important. We don't like it, but it does eventually have a positive effect on our life. But hopefully if you didn't have a father figure or a mother figure in your life that provided with good discipline, you found a mentor or someone who is pointing you in the right direction and helping you make good choices. In verse 8 it says, if God doesn't discipline you as he does all his children, it means that you are illegitimate and are really not his children at all. So expect it. If we're going to follow God, we need to expect discipline. But here's the reason. It's in verse 10. And this is where it kind of takes a whole other aspect. And this is why. It says, for our earthly fathers disciplined us for a few years, doing the best they knew how. But God's discipline is always good for us, so that we might share in his holiness. So now it's just not about our actions, it's not about just relationships, but something even greater. It's about holiness. It's about our holiness with him. And so the discipline that comes from God is vital to us because it makes us more and more holy, and we get to share in that with him. And just think about our relationships, the relationships that you're in. What if we were all pursuing holiness in our relationships? Just imagine what your marriage would look like if together you made a decision that we are going to pursue holiness in our relationship together. You would put each other first. You'd be set apart. You wouldn't be like all other marriages out there that maybe disappoint. You want something special. You would start to put discipline into your marriage, and things would start to grow. What about your relationships within the church, where you start to put discipline in your life and you become more and more holy? What is a church like that going to look like? It's going to thrive. Work. We love this word. Work at living in peace with everyone, and work at living a holy life. This is kind of blunt. For those who are not holy will not see the Lord. For those who are not holy will not see the Lord. It's going to take work. Discipline takes work. To live at peace with everyone in your relationships, oh man, I don't have to be on social media for very long before I'm agitated, right? Oh, and I just want to, there's something inside me that wants to come out and want to say something that I know is hurtful. What is that in me? I want God to take that away from me. And that's what holiness does. We pursue it in our lives. So holiness is pretty important, especially if it's for those who are not holy, will not see the Lord. But I think our holiness always shows itself in our relationships with one another. Look at verse 15. This is where Daryl uses in his prayer this morning. Look after each other so that none of you fails to receive the grace of God. And then watch out that no poisonous root of bitterness grows up to trouble you, corrupting many. There's a constant battle that's going on in each and every one of us, and it's between holiness and bitterness. And there is nothing that will destroy holiness in our lives when you hold on to a bitter root, and it destroys relationships. But I also want to take this to a whole other level as well. Holiness is just not something that we can mess around with. Holiness shouldn't be taken lightly. It can be fearful, and it can be frightening. It can be an experience that sometimes we take for granted, but it's dangerous. Holiness is dangerous. But God wants us to be like him, and he's willing to go to great lengths to help us be holy like him. It cost him his son. So the question is, what does it mean to you and to me to encounter a holy God? What does it mean? And how does this affect our lives when we are trying to become holy like him? So we're going to tackle that here. We're going to do some mountain climbing. So get ready to climb some mountains together. There's two. And first of all, depending on what mountain you want to climb, one is going to be a great day of great joy, of great celebration. The other mountain we climb will be a bad day of loss and regret. So it's very important that you come to grips with where you stand in these two events in your life. Let's continue in verse 18. It says, "You have not come to a physical mountain." You have not come to a physical mountain. To a place with flaming fire, darkness, gloom, and whirlwind, as the Israelites did at Mount Sinai. Do you remember the story? The author's assuming you remember this story. In 60 AD, these Hebrew Christians would have known exactly what he's talking about. He's taking something out of Exodus and he's condensing it right here. And he says, "For they heard an awesome trumpet blast and a voice so terrible that they begged God to stop speaking, and they staggered back under God's command. Even if an animal touches the mountain, it must be stoned to death. And Moses himself was so frightened at the sight that he said, 'I am terrified and I am trembling.'" That's one mountain. But what on earth is this author talking about? What is this mountain? But the author, again, is assuming that you know. These listeners would have known exactly what he was talking about as he brings this up. But for us, we may not be so familiar. So I just want to take us back. If you have your Bibles with you, it's in Exodus. But I want to give you a little bit of the timeline here. So this is the unfolding story of God. Hebrews has kind of gone through all these things, talking about Jesus is greater. He's the greater human. He's the greater rest. He's the greater high priest. And now he's bringing up this story about this mountain. But Abraham was made a promise. Abraham was the father of faith, and he was made a promise that he was going to have many children, many generations that were going to come after him. But the problem was that he was 95 years old. He was really old before he had his child. And he started to lose hope in the promise God made 25 years earlier. So they even tried some other things to make that work. I'll let you read about that on your own. But finally he has Isaac, and they celebrate. And Isaac, there's a unique story about Isaac where God tested his faith. We'll leave that for another day as well. But Isaac goes on and has children. And he has Jacob and Esau, twins. And Jacob goes on to have 12 sons. And those 12 sons continue to grow, and the family of the Israelites continue to grow, and God's promise continues to come true. Jacob has one son called Joseph. Do you remember Joseph? His brothers, who were bullies, sold him into slavery. But God always has a plan, even in things that don't look like they're going very well. Joseph ends up in Egypt. Joseph works for Pharaoh, and he has this gift of interpreting dreams. And he finds that there's going to be a famine. Well, it's not soon after that his brothers realize they're running out of food, and they bring his father. They end up in Egypt, and there's food there. And they reconcile the family, but they continue to grow. And Pharaoh starts to become worried. Oh my goodness, all these people, what is going on? We need to put them into slavery, otherwise they are going to take over. And so the Israelites find themselves in slavery. For 400 years, they are enslaved. But God raises up Moses. Many of you know Moses. Moses, maybe you saw the movie, Exodus. He comes in, 10 plagues to Pharaoh. They end up crossing the Red Sea. And they go through the Red Sea, and the Egyptians start to chase them, and they drowned as the Red Sea covers them up. But they come to this mountain, and it's Mount Sinai. And they're standing before this mountain, and God is about to meet them there. Because this God that we have in our lives is so holy and so other than us that he's dangerous. He's dangerous. But he wants to be so badly around his people that he's providing a way to meet his people. And he comes to this mountain. You can follow along in your Bibles with Exodus chapter 19, verse 9. And it says this, "The Lord said to Moses, I am going to come to you in a dense cloud so that the people will hear me speaking with you and will always put their trust in you." Then Moses told the Lord what the people had said. And the Lord said to Moses, "Go to the people and consecrate," here's a church word for us, "consecrate them today and tomorrow." Maybe for some of you, we don't know what that means. We'll get to that in a second. "Have them wash their clothes and be ready by the third day." So for 3 days, they were going to consecrate themselves. "Because on that day, the Lord will come down on Mount Sinai in the sight of all the people. Put limits for the people around the mountain and tell them, be careful that you do not go up the mountain or touch the foot of the mountain. Whoever touches the mountain will surely be put to death. He surely shall be stoned or shot with arrows. Not a hand is to be laid on him. Whether man or animal, he shall not be permitted to live. Only when the ram's horn sounds a long blast may they go up the mountain." Okay, so this word consecrate, it means that in our state, in our unholy state, we are impure and not able to come to a holy God. Can't. Not in our impure state. And it means death. It means danger. And so they had to consecrate themselves. And they washed and became ceremonially pure. But as we go on here in 20, just flip the page, chapter 20, verse 18. This is when God meets them. It says, "When the people saw the thunder and the lightning and heard the trumpet and saw the mountain in smoke, they trembled with fear. They stayed at a distance and said to Moses, 'Speak to us yourselves, and we will listen. But do not have God speak to us, or we will die.' So Moses said to the people, 'Do not be afraid. God has come to test you so that your fear of God will be with you to keep you from sinning.' The people remained at a distance while Moses approached the thick darkness where God was." So this writer of Hebrews is bringing to their attention this God who is about to meet them. This is in their history. They would know this well. They used to memorize this when they were kids. They know exactly the story that he's talking about. Now, is this the mountain that we Jesus followers come to? Or is there a different mountain? Because this is a tale of two mountains, and we're going to do some mountain climbing. We can climb that mountain, or we can climb a different one. And those who have not been consecrated, or those who have not been set apart, those who have not been made holy, which Jesus does for us, it's going to be dreadful and terrifying experience when we meet this holy God. And for some of us, we're going to wrestle with that. It makes us uncomfortable. We don't like that characteristic of God. We misinterpret what holiness is. And it leaves us with this view of God that we don't like. We don't like this God. What about this gracious and loving and compassionate and forgiving God? That's the God I hear about in the Word of God. That's the God I want. But we must understand that God's holiness is about his power and his purity. And there is no other being like him. He is completely other than. Nothing compares with him. Do you remember Sinead O'Connor's song back in the 80s? We were talking about songs from the 80s. Here's one. Nothing compares to you. Yeah, nothing compares to God. And you and I, we people, when we come into this presence of a holy God, of a being who is so powerful, who is so pure and full of goodness, it is overwhelming. It's dangerous because he exposes us for who we truly are. We're seen for what we really are. And so when we come into his presence, he shines a spotlight on us. And it's terrifying because you don't know if you will survive. So before we can fully understand who this God truly is, we must come to this mountain first and understand that God is so completely other than us. And somehow we have to wrap our heads around this God. God is all loving. He is all merciful. He is graceful. But he is completely other than, and he is holy. So I don't know where this sits with you this morning. I don't even know where you try to wrap your head around this. Maybe it offends you. God isn't loving if this is the type of God he is. Maybe this God makes you mad and you refuse to accept a God like this. Who wants to be around a God like this? Because even if I get close to him, I will die. And we don't understand his nature sometimes. This type of God is foreign to us because what we like to do, instead of understanding that we've been created in his image, we like to create God into our image. And there's a big difference. So I want you to be thinking about this. That might help us understand it a little bit better. Right now, there is a star in the sky, and it shines. It's 93 million miles away from us, thank goodness. This star is a star that we on this earth revolve around. To get around it once, it takes 365 days, 5 hours, 59 minutes, and 16 seconds to complete our journey around this star. This star is like a giant nuclear reactor at the center of the solar system. You could fit 1 million Earths into the size of this star, and many of you know what I'm talking about. It's the sun. Now, the sun in 1 second puts out enough power to supply the world for 688,000 years with power. 1 second. It creates that much power. If we were any closer to it in our solar system, we would disintegrate and burn up. Now, I'm sure that many of you in Edmonton this summer has been fantastic, and we've taken advantage of the sunshine. But if you're out there all day in the sunshine with no protection, you probably experience a sunburn. My question for you, is the sun bad? No, the sun is the sun. Is it the sun's fault that you experienced the sunburn? Can you stare at the sun and just stare at it? No, it burns your eyes. You have to look away. But the sun is dreadful if we get too close because it's a ball of energy that will kill us if we don't handle it with fear and awe. We got to respect it because the sun is completely other than. And so this is a lot like holiness. It's dangerous. We must respect it because God is other than. So I just want us to drive this home for a moment. Just like the sun is not something that you mess around with, God is not someone to be messed around with either. But this is not because God is bad. It's because God is holy. It's because he's other than. And God is being his nature, and I am not fit to be in his presence while in an impure, unholy, sinful state. Can't. It's not his nature. I will be consumed. I will be burned up. And you can protest against that all you want. You can complain against the sun all you want for being too hot. But you're not going to change it. You must learn to respect it. And yet we do this with God all the time. We want him to be like we want him to be. And we come dangerously close to being consumed. And God is like that God that came to meet his people on that first mountain, Mount Sinai. And is it possible that God is not at fault here? Could it be that we are at fault? Because here's the good news. There's another mountain that the writer shows. It's a mountain that is so much different than Mount Sinai. And it describes Mount Zion. Listen to what he says in verse 22. He says, "Now you have come to Mount Zion, to the city of the living God, the holy or the heavenly Jerusalem, and to countless thousands of angels in a joyful gathering." Sounds like a party. "You have come to the assembly of God's firstborn children, whose names are written in heaven, those who have gone before you. You have come to God himself, who is the judge over all things. You have come to the spirits of the righteous ones in heaven, who have now been made perfect." The only reason that they are able to be in the presence of God wherever this party is happening is because they have been made perfect. They have been made holy. You have come to Jesus, the one who mediates the new covenant between God and people, and to the sprinkled blood which speaks of forgiveness instead of crying out for vengeance like the blood of Abel. Now, it's taking you back to something you should know from your Old Testament as well. Cain and Abel, you remember that story. God says, don't let sin master you, and it did, and Cain ended up killing his brother, and he's crying out for vengeance. But we have come to someone who mediates a new covenant between God and people. Someone who's made us right in our unholy state, who's made us holy, who's made us pure, so that we can come to this God and be with him. Now, this mountain is worth living for. But we have to wrap our heads around Mount Sinai as well. Because this is the deal. When you come to Jesus, into God's holy presence, it is no longer a threat to you if you come through Jesus. And because of Jesus, we get to share in God's holiness. And this mountain is worth running to. It's the same God. It's not two different gods, but there are two different mountains. Which mountain do you want to live on? In verse 25, it says, "Be careful that you do not refuse to listen to the one who is speaking. For if the people of Israel did not escape when they refused to listen to Moses, the earthly messenger, we will certainly not escape if we reject the one who speaks to us from heaven. When God spoke from Mount Sinai, his voice shook the earth, but now he makes another promise. Once again, I will shake the earth, not only the earth this time, but the heavens also. This means that all of creation will be shaken and removed, so that only unshakable things will remain. Since we are receiving a kingdom that is unshakable, let us be thankful and please God by worshiping him with holy fear and awe, for our God is a devouring fire." So the author wants us to see there's another shakedown coming. There is a shakedown coming. And everything that is impure in this creation will be shaken and removed. And we want this. We do want this. Because when you watch the news and when you look and see what's out there and you see the evil and you see the crime and you see this empire versus love and you see the hostility and all the war that's going on, you want something better. You want God to remove it. And his promise is that he will. But for those of us who have come into this relationship with Jesus, into this kingdom that he's provided for us, we will not be shaken. It's a kingdom that will never be shaken. So I'm going to leave you with some questions. What things are you holding on to that will one day be shaken? What are you filling your lives with that will not survive the great shakedown? What things are you putting in place of God in your life? The idols in your life that will soon be shaken. What things are you looking to give you meaning and significance and purpose that are only one day going to be destroyed? See, God's holiness will one day expose everything. And all those things in our lives will one day be shaken, except for the ones that are unshakable. So you have two mountains. You have Mount Sinai, fear, trembling, earthquakes, and you have Mount Zion, celebration, joy, and an endless party. So what mountain are you climbing? What are the things that are keeping you from Mount Zion? Things that one day will not remain. I know the Hebrew author right now is getting into our grills. They're really just coming close to our face and saying, come on. But this is what I want to leave us with. The cross is where our shaky things can be taken from us. The cross is where we are made holy, where we can come into the holy presence of God and not fear him. Christ says to boldly go into the presence of God. The cross is where we can come into the holy presence of God and not burn up. It's where he makes us like him. So thank you, Jesus, for making us holy by your sacrifice. We at this time have a time to celebrate what Jesus has done for us. We get to celebrate with those who have gone on before us. We get to celebrate with those who are still seeking and are one day going to come to Jesus, who are going to start climbing Mount Zion together. And we're doing that together. We get to bring kingdom to the earth. That's what we are here to do, to show that there's a better kingdom, an eternal kingdom that is unshakable. And we get to do that. So if you haven't yet, you can go to the back and get your communion, and we'll come back and remember Christ together.